Hello, I'm Kads, and welcome to today's video. So today is going to be the last of the demon-only challenge tournaments, that being Demonspawn only in Fire Knight's Castle. And it will come as no surprise that this is basically the same as the previous ones, except, of course, that this one does not have any Titan event points, because, of course, the Titan event is over, the Demon Slayer Titan event, that being. And so, honestly, the rewards for this one are extremely lackluster. I'm not going to lie to you. So it's honestly might not be worth it for a majority of people to participate in this one. A 5-star chicken is really only useful, in my opinion, in the early game and doesn't really do much in the end game. But nonetheless, we'll talk about another reason why you might still want to participate in Fire Knight in general. But as far as using demons only, I'll show you the team that I came up with for stage 25 normal mode. But again, I honestly don't really recommend this one. There's a fusion starting soon, so you can use your energy on this prior to that. There's also a CVC going on right now, so it could be advantageous to be running Fire Knight or just getting Savage gear and stuff like that. But the rewards from this tournament in and of itself aren't that great. The gold chest isn't that amazing. There's no Void Shard. There's no Prism, anything going on. So you have a chance to potentially win some Relentless gear if you top out your tournament, but that's probably going to be unlikely because Demonspawn, Fire Knight, first champion that comes to mind, of course, is Allure, which most people are going to have, and so that's the basis of a lot of team comps, and so it's going to be fairly accessible to most people, so it's going to be tougher to win this tournament. I mean, you can see that I'm winning right now, but I highly doubt that will hold till the end. Hopping over to the dungeon itself, let's talk about the best stages to farm. My standard disclaimer for this one is that for any challenge tournaments, especially ones that are limited to one faction, I highly recommend dropping down to normal mode. Hard mode is just harder to do, especially when you're restricted to one singular faction or one group of faction. And in this case, the Demonspawn practically don't have any freeze champions, so it wouldn't really work as far as keeping the shield down, much less getting it down in the first place. I don't even know if there's an ally attacker in the Demonspawn off the top of my head. But yeah, if you were farming normal mode, then stage 25 would give you the best quality gear. Stage 20 will give you the most efficient stage, so the best points for energy. And then if you want an easier experience just to get the tournament done, then stage 16 will work. It's Void Affinity, much easier to do, and you still maintain a chance to get 6-star gear. But with all that said, as you can see here, there's a 3x on Savage, so you could say screw the restrictions, screw the Demonspawn. I'm just going to run Fire Knight normally for the next couple of days, and then you'll just be taking advantage of 3x on Savage, which honestly I could recommend, or I do recommend to a lot of people if that is up your alley. In my case, I'm kind of getting the best of both worlds because I am able to do the tournament, and hopefully I can, place top 3 if it's a little bit unpopular and get some Relentless gear on top of it, whilst also getting some Savage. Obviously, the quality will be slightly worse compared to my hard mode stage 16 that I run normally, but nonetheless, I think it's still worth it, in my case, to run the tournament and kind of double dip as far as getting some Savage gear as well. So the team I have to showcase for you guys today is fairly accessible, and the one mythical here is the one you can obtain for free just by playing long enough. But in fairness, this slot is really just an additional DPS, so this could be anyone else you have in the Demonspawn who can deal damage and is a good affinity for whichever fight you're doing, as we'll see in the run. But we have Magnar, primary DPS, we have Carnage, who's secondary DPS, or vice versa, whichever way you want to think about it. We have Gorlos Helma, our resident debuffer, who's an epic. We have Allure, of course, the turn meter control queen, and basically on her own she can keep the turn meter down for the boss just because of the affinity matchup, so that is very nice. And then just in case if anything starts to go wrong, we have a reviver here, healer, on the team with Endure the Hunger. So 4 epics and 1 mythical, but it's the mythical that you can obtain eventually from the Cursed City. So let's go ahead and see this team in action. It's pretty darn straightforward here. I do have Carnage open with the A3 just in case he happens to get lucky and debuff spread the block active skills, block passive skills, but it's obviously, I think it's a 50% chance, so most of the time he doesn't actually do it. Or I guess half the time he doesn't do it. And so I don't really rely on that, but nonetheless, it does help. It places more debuffs, which activates his, increases his damage output in Form 2. But yeah, pretty much it's just, debuff and nuke and kind of work our way through the wave. So this is a bit faster somehow. Usually it takes closer to 40-ish seconds, 45, depending on the, the RNG. Again, if we lock out the active skills, whether or not they can use abilities and whatnot. So kind of varies, but that was definitely a faster cycle for wave 1. But here we are, wave 2, pretty much rinse and repeat. Magnar is doing the thing. Carnage, he's unfortunately for me, Carnage is unbooked in Form 2, so there's a little bit of damage being left on the table, but that's just the nature of the beast. I don't have enough mythical tomes to book him out, although I would love to book out his second form. But yeah, no worries here if Carnage dies, which usually is the case, unless a lower can kind of take control and start dropping turn meter. But that's why we have Endure the Hunger in the squad, because there's a reviver and we have a fairly squishy team. Apparently Nethril there died to reflect damage. I haven't seen that. That's the first. But yeah, again, pretty straightforward here. We just, nuke or debuff and slowly nuke our way through the waves. And yeah, somewhere around 90 seconds. Worst case, I want to say around 1 minute 45, maybe 2 minutes with some really bad RNG. But from then on, it's basically just pretty easy to do. So we don't have to worry about, ally attack, counterattack for the purpose of getting down the shield. All that matters is that all of our champions or most of the champions are 2 times the speed of the boss, which is, I think you need around 230 speed to pass that threshold. And once you do that, basically you go to 2-to-1 ratio relative to the boss. And especially Allure, with that in mind for Allure, she can just take a lot of turns and just keep the turn meter down basically on her own. And then from then on, debuffing and nuking just like we did for the wave. So overall, I believe the team takes around 3 to 3.5 minutes, give or take, which is pretty decent considering that we are one or single faction locked. And then about the AI overrides, one thing to mention, my usual standard is that open or don't use for my debuffers on the wave, so that way the decreased defense is ready to go when the next wave starts. Allure, I turned off her A3 the entire time. I left her A2 on because it's not a reliable form of CC, but every so often she might just sleep someone who's about to take a turn and kill Carnage, for example. So it's just kind of handy to have that on. But also she has the Cruelty Blessing, as we'll see later as we talk about the builds. And, hitting everyone twice is extra decreasing of their defense with the Cruelty Blessing, so it just kind of helps. But yeah, there's not a ton of AI overrides here because it's a pretty bare bones team. Just debuff, nuke, and turn meter control here. So there you go. Just under 3 minutes. That's the PR, as we kind of noticed there with the wave 1 being faster than usual. But yeah, I would say 3 minutes to 3.5 minutes, give or take. And obviously, or as we'll see later, my Carnage is not necessarily in the most DPS build. He's in my arena build, so he definitely could hit harder if I had him in an attack percentage chest, for example. All right, so let's take a look at the builds on all of these champions, starting off with the turn meter control queen herself, that being Allure, who's in, of course, as you might have seen, a Relentless set. She was getting a lot or decent amount of extra turns in that fight. And her total stats are as follows: 42,000 on the HP, 2,400 on the defense, 251 on the speed, full crit rate, a decent amount of crit damage, 187, nothing crazy though, and 411 on the accuracy. This is her Dark Fae build, and you'll note that she's one of the few epics that I'm purposefully not empowering. I don't want her to be tankier for the Dark Fae because I want it to be relatively easy to kill the mirror copies, and so I want her as squishy as possible. And so we're indexing more or less into survivability. So this is my Dark Fae built Allure. I do have a relic on her. I wanted to highlight this, but the wearer's turn meter reduction effects are boosted by 15%. So this is a rare relic. It's only level 3. So you probably have a copy of this one, and there's very, very few champions I believe that this is really that useful on, but on her, I think it's the best thing ever. So it's improving her turn meter suppression on the A1 by 50% relative to the 25%, which is pretty substantial across all 3 of the hits. I talked about the blessing there, cruelty, again with using the A2, it's a double hitter AoE, so that can place the weak version, but we have the big version to decrease defense, but more importantly it just hits them so it can decrease their defense. And then for the masteries, is pretty standard debuffer stuff. We have the crescent moon, as I like to call it, for the offense tree, coming to the left hand side but banking over back to Giant Slayer, because of course she has a triple hitter on the A1, and the support tree hanging or hugging on the right side of things. Next up we have my Dur the Hunger, who we've probably seen in many of these teams, but he is in a smattering of gear, but immortal, resilience, speed, and then 2 pieces of protection for the stats. So his total stats are as follows: 65,000 on the HP, 3,300 on the defense, 243 on the speed, and then 433 on the resistance. So high-ish speed and high resistance and survivability is the build for him. Don't have a relic on him. I do have the Nourish Blessing on him. It improves the healing from continuous heals, but also can restore destroyed max HP, which could be useful in Fire Knight, but as you saw, the Fire Knight barely gets a turn or never gets a turn, so we don't really have to worry about him destroying our max HP, but nonetheless it does help. And if you want to run Dur in the Centranos version of Fire Knight, then the reflect damage from this comes in handy and pairs well again with restoring of the destroyed max HP, which will happen when you attack him. And of course there's no masteries because this is more of a faction wars Curse City style of champion. Next up, we have Gorlas Helmal, who we've also seen many times in this recent Demonspawn only series, but he's just in Perception gear. Recently rebuilt for the purposes of hard mode faction wars. The total stats here: 38,000 on the HP, 4,600 on the attack, 2,800 on the defense, 222 on the speed, full crit rate, 188 on the crit damage, and then 350 on the accuracy, again targeting the faction wars hard mode level threshold of accuracy. We don't have a relic on him either. We do have, or I have Phantom Touch on him because of some Fire Knight utility in the Cursed City, but again, this could be cruelty because he is a debuffered AoE decreased defense. And then similar logic to Dur, no masteries, but I did get the crit rate because, you know, he is a damage dealer, so I did want a little bit of the crit rate. Next up, we have Magnar, who is recently +4 empowered. So the fully empowered Magnar here in a bare bones or like leftover savage set, shall we say, with 1 piece of stone skin for the extra HP. His total stats are as follows: 93,000 on the HP and 178 on the speed, 2,700 on the defense, full crit rate, 207 on the crit damage, and then don't care about the accuracy or the resistance. So again, he's not in like my best HP based nuker gear by any means, but he is in just, you know, leftovers more or less. You don't have a relic on him either, and then I do have Crushing Rend on him. Ideally this would be 6-star, but it's 1-star for now, but you know, he would hit harder with it being 6-star. Masteries partially done. You know, he was one of the champions I used to use a long time ago, and so he does have some masteries, but I didn't end up finishing them out entirely. But yeah, it comes down to Helm Smasher. He's built like an arena, like a really old school arena nuker with you know, Heart of Glory, Ruthless Ambush, and all that stuff. But yeah, ultimately coming down to Helm Smasher to ignore as much defense as possible in the defense tree. I think I was angling towards Retribution, but again, he's not really one of my primary nukers, so I didn't opt to finish said masteries. And then lastly, we have my Carnage, the Anarch, who I did a showcase on. You can check that video out in the card up above if you'd like to see a little bit more detail. But he is an a lethal set, and ideally it'd be 2-piece Feral, but for now it's just the 1-piece Feral. And what I was referring to earlier in the run was that I have an accuracy chest on him, so I'm focusing a little bit more on accuracy in this build, even because his multipliers are decently high enough. So I want him to place his debuffs, but if I had an attack percentage chest on him, he would probably hit a lot harder, especially on wave 1 where they're a little bit squishier, but I digress. Total stats here for 39,000 on the HP, 4,200 on the attack, 2,200 on the defense, 266 on the speed, full crit rate 227 on the crit damage, and 455 on the accuracy. On him, we don't have a relic either. And then for, I guess I should mention, yeah, he's booked on Form 1. I did book him in Form 1 because I didn't want to maximize the ignore resistance, especially of the A3, because again, I'm more indexing into accuracy in my build, my arena build for him, and then the cooldowns here. But on Form 2, he is completely unbooked pending. I think he's second in line. First is Empress. In terms of booking, and no blessing just yet. For the masteries, of course, he is built like somewhat like a nuker, a more modern style nuker, I would say. But I also indexed into the support tree for a lot of the accuracy stuff because again, I'm focusing on accuracy in my build overall. But sniper, master hexer, and whatnot. And then obviously we're coming down to Helm Smasher in the on the offense tree. But we're going through making sure to get Cycle of Violence as well. But the rest of it's just hugging the left hand side. So yeah, pretty standard stuff there in those. Are the builds for the team. In terms of who else can help you in the Demonspawn faction for the purposes of Fire Knight, let's start off with the turn meter controllers. Now, I didn't really mention, or I didn't highlight it in my team because I just kept him in Form 2, but Carnage technically does have a turn meter steal on the 3rd hit of the A3. It's also a triple hitter, which is pretty nice. But if you don't have a lower for some reason, but you have Carnage, which I highly doubt, or if you just don't trust your lower on her own, you can keep him in Form 1 and have him pair with her in terms of turn meter control, but Allure can obviously do that on her own, as we saw. And then Countess Lick somewhere has this ability here, decreased turn meter. It's small, but it could be all you need, and more importantly, it has decreased speed in the mix. An Epic we've probably seen many times across some of these teams, but Skimphos, kind of the same thing as Carnage, where he has a turn meter steal here on the A3 on a 3-turn cooldown, as long as his attack is critical, so you do have to build him with full crit rate, which is pretty nice. And then he also has double hitter on the A1 with decreased speed, so again, he can be your decreased speed champion. And then if you're really struggling, then Diabolist has decrease, or turn meter fill, turn meter decrease, the Deacon Armstrong ability here, and then increased speed here for your team. So probably not the best, but if you're really early game, mid game, struggling to do something, then she might be able to come into your teams. In terms of the debuffers, the same two as I always mentioned, but Sissy of Flame Tongue has decreased defense and weaken alongside HP burn activation, and then the one we saw in my team, which is Gorlos Helma, the only one that I have. And then in terms of supports, there are plenty of them that you can throw into your team. Prince Kymar can work if you have a really strong enough nuker that can just bop on the waves, which mine obviously could not do, so I didn't bring a Kymar resetting didn't really do anything. Wither the Crown is a great support, can keep your team alive and running, but it's just riskier because if people die, then she's going to revive her. So I didn't opt for that one, but nonetheless, she can work to protect your team. Lots of healing. Duchess is obviously an upgrade to Dur. If you happen to have her, increased attack is good for your nukers. Block debuffs is great to protect your team, and the Veil is great to protect your team as well. Helicath can do a similar thing where you hide your team under block damage and you worry a little bit less about dying. And then you can also run Achak the Wenderin, who has a chance to freeze or burn depending on the stats of the enemies, so it may or may not be that helpful. And then honorable mention to Padma. I always like to mention her when possible, but as long as she crits on her A1, she can place AoE decrease attack, which can be useful for, again, keeping your team alive. You can turn off her other abilities and just have her spam the A1. And then I guess second honorable mention would be Abyssal. He has an AoE on the A1. So if you're really struggling for CC, you can put him in a stun set. Block buffs is pretty useful, and just hope that he stuns people when he takes his turns. And I guess in terms of CC, how can I forget? Honorable Enchantress, duh. 2-turn provoke on a 5-turn cooldown, so you can pretty much lock down the wave. So if you really need some hard CC control, then she is your girl. So yeah, there you have it. That is my team for this Demons Only Fire Knight tournament. And this is technically a repeat. This tournament style is a repeat from one last year. I think it was in May or April or something like that. But my team has upgraded a little bit since then. Obviously, the Curse City came out and Carnage is joining the squad and is kind of replaced. I think Skimfos is probably in that position. Maybe I'll have to go back and see. I tend to just come up with new teams on the spot, and sometimes they are exactly the same as the old teams, but I digress. Let me know in the comment section down below if you're going to be participating in this tournament. Again, I recommend that you probably don't. I don't think it's useful for most people, and you should probably just run your normal Fire Knight team and take advantage of the 3x on Savage. But if you did come up with the team, I'd be keen to know exactly what it is and how it fares in terms of time. As always, if you did find this video helpful, then be sure to hit that like button down below. It really does help out the channel, and feel free to hit the subscribe button down below for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.